Hello and welcome to 18WJTS in.form. Well, tonight we're going to see part 2 of the sexual assault interview we had from last night. Today we're going to be talking with 2 experts who deal with this on a regular basis. Last night's show featured someone who was anonymous, who came and spoke to us about an assault that happened. And that was a connection that was made through one of these 2 ladies. And first of all, we want to introduce Paula Rasche. Paula is the Executive Director for Crisis Connection. Also joining us is Tammy Lampert, who is the Executive Director for the Southwest Indiana Child Advocacy Center.
Yes.
Okay, SWICACC. It's easier for me just to say SWICACC.
That works.
Which does forensics interviews with younger folks who have been assaulted in some way or been part of a crime. So we want to thank you both for being here, and thank you for setting up that interview.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, we're glad to be here. Paul, I think first of all, let's find out how did that person come forward?
It's my impression that information in the media, the Me Too movement, kind of sparked an interest on her behalf to take action and do something. I think she was to a point where she felt like it would be therapeutic to share her story. Although I have to, we chose to respect the fact that she still wanted to maintain confidence and not disclose who she was or is.
Okay, so she contacted you and said, I'd like, and so then we did the interview which aired last night.
Yes.
What are you hoping that folks get from this interview, Tammy? What do you hope?
Well, I watched the interview, and I think that, I think that she was very brave, that she could come forward now. And I think that I liked how she said that it was therapeutic to her, and then that she wanted to help others. And so I think for victims to know that, while we of course want victims to come forward right away so that they can start that healing process as soon as possible, prosecution and stuff can happen to hold the perpetrator accountable. I think that it was really beneficial to any victim to know that even if you didn't tell your story right when it happened, it can help you to tell your story at any point. And so I found that to be really powerful.
Now, this is something that happened to her a number of years ago. So, I'm thinking, in my experience, years ago, I didn't really realize things happened like that on a somewhat consistent basis, or that there were even entities like Crisis Connection. And at that time, SWICACC did not exist, or some of the other entities that exist to help folks like that. And then I start doing the WJTS in.form shows, and I've talked to folks from Crisis Connection, or I find out about the CASA kids, the court-appointed special advocates, or you talk to the sheriff, or folks like that, and you start to realize we don't live in such a clean world that we would like to. So now these Crisis Connection exists, SWICACC exists, so we want people to understand that there are outlets or places you can go if you need help. So first of all, let's talk about what does Crisis Connection do, and how could you have helped that person?
The services that we provide are support and education based. We initiate the healing process by giving that person, some people choose to talk to somebody that they don't know for the same reason that the victim that was filmed chose to remain anonymous. She was trying to protect her family and friends and herself. Sometimes victims don't have anybody to talk to. They don't want to burden somebody with what happened to them. And that's extremely sad that's a common reaction. So our services are support education based. We listen, we provide support, we educate them about the fact that the reaction isn't, there's a variety of different reactions people can have, and a lot of people are questioning whether or not they're normal for reacting the way they did to such an intimate crime. So we educate them about that, and reaffirm with them that what their options are, depending on how much time has elapsed. Educate them about the common reactions to trauma. And we also provide support group opportunities for them. Sometimes people just want to be with people that have had similar experiences as well. So we're there to help the healing process. Some people, that's all they need is our support education. There are others that they need much more than that, or some more than that, and that's where we rely on trusted mental health providers in our communities we hand the baton off and make a referral and and they take it to the next level to help them work towards healing.
And Tammy, on your end with SWICACC, you work more on the interview to get to the perpetrator.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we do the interview with the kids, it's to help the child be able to disclose what happened. And then it's also to help facilitate with the team so that the investigation can move forward to keep that child safe in the future.
Do you two refer back and forth to each other? Does Crisis Connection say, well, I guess really you only come into play through SWICACC if the prosecutor or the police need help from you?
The Department of Child Services or law enforcement.
Okay,
Yeah.
they contact you and say, we
Yeah.
have a case, we need to
Yeah.
get something to get the perpetrator.
And we refer to Crisis Connection all the time for the victims, the secondary victims. I had a phone call from just another professional yesterday, and I referred them to Crisis Connection. So those referrals we make to Crisis Connection all the time. For us, the only referrals we can take is through Department of Child Services or through law enforcement.
Okay. And you're not the only entities that really exist, I guess, to help folks that might be in a situation. There's churches and many other ways they can go. They don't have to contact you, correct? There's somebody else they can go to.
And sometimes that's part of the role we play is, okay, help them develop a support system to help them through their situation, you know, and it might be identifying trusted individuals like a minister or a coworker or, typically another parent or that sort of thing. That is part of what we do.
Okay, now, and I think I'm going to go back again to what is it you want people watching after having watched last night's interview, and we'll air it again on WJTS at some time. What are you hoping they got from that? What's the takeaway?
It happened several years ago, and many things have changed, but unfortunately not enough has. For the same reason that that victim chose to not pursue legal charges, or that still happens today. They don't want to face the attitudes or the victim blaming that they get from the community. I mean, in the very recent past, there's, our local news outlets do a good job of keeping the community informed of what's happening in the community. And through social media outlets, they post the articles, and then there's the comments. I mean, that's an example of, and so they didn't have social media around when this incident happened, but those attitudes have maintained. It's a crime where people talk more about the victim's part in the crime than the perpetrator. We're still not holding perpetrators accountable enough. I mean, still, the stats haven't changed in 20-some years, the number of perpetrators that do time for the crime.
Well, we probably hear a lot of that, although kids are sometimes just put into a situation that they don't really have any control over. But oftentimes you go, oh, well, she was asking for it. She put herself in that position, or I guess he put himself in that position. Most of these situations are relational somehow. And I think sometimes we think, oh, that only happens on a dark night in the woods with a stranger you don't know. They grab you and something happens. That's probably at least the case. But then you deal with kids mostly.
Yeah, and like for us, I think it's like 96% of child abuse victims, I mean, they know their perpetrator. It's either a family member or a friend of the family or someone that they know, someone that should be caring for them, not abusing them. And so I don't know what the statistics are for adults, but
60 to 70% of adults are impacted by a trusted, known individual.
How do we get past that victim blaming? Because it is easy to do. It's easy to say, oh, well.
Well, I think Paula, when we were talking just before we started, and Paula made the correlation to if somebody burglarized your house. And I think that was a really, a good way to make an analogy with it, that if somebody came in and burglarized your house, your neighbors wouldn't say, well, you shouldn't have had nice things, and place the blame on the victim. They will place the blame on the victim if the house wasn't locked. I mean, we hear that, unfortunately, which is, again, victim blaming, as opposed to looking at the perpetrator's role in it. Why would you take something that's not yours?
Right. Well, and no means no. Sometimes we just don't, I guess people don't understand that end of it.
And that's Crisis Connection is playing a role in preventing these. We're trying to put as much energy into preventing these crimes from happening in the first place. And so we're in the schools educating about consent, and making sure that that is clearly understood. And we're also educating people about the role that alcohol plays in social settings. And again, sometimes we feel that we're encouraging girls to protect, or girls to protect themselves. And even in that situation, it feels kind of odd that the prevention efforts sometimes still focus on what victims can do to prevent it from happening versus the perpetrators.
And some maybe a prevention can come from the fact that if you know you're going to get into a situation, have a plan ahead of time, I guess, of an escape. But you're seeing people too late, because when you see people, they've already been assaulted in some way.
And that's like on our part with the education of educating kids to where if somebody shows them something or says something that's not okay, to tell right away then before the hands-on abuse actually occurs. Same thing to educate parents. What about this person do you trust leaving your child alone with them? Or what kind of attention is that child paying to you? What kind of attention is that perpetrator giving to your child? And why is it to that child and maybe not the other children? Just to look for those red flags to try and prevent that. I know, like with a lot of times in education with youth providers and stuff, we say, why does the adult have to be alone with the child one-on-one? And maybe they have to have a confidential conversation, but then it can be done where the door has a window, to where it kind of eliminates those opportunities for the abuse to happen.
I guess really what it comes down to, the whole point of doing the show is we need people to be aware and know that these situations happen, and they happen in our neighborhoods, they happen within our families. We just got to make sure that we're watching for things, but to know that there are entities like Crisis Connection you can call for help, and that there is SWICACC, which will do interviews with kids so the kids don't have to talk to 6 different people to get the information out. Anything you two would like to add?
And it's never too late for somebody to reach out for help. We respect people and their individual situations and their stories. It's their story to tell, and it's their timing. But it's never too late to begin the healing process.
And we're talking, I guess, 2 different levels. We're talking about, because you deal with kids, generally 18 and under, or somebody has special needs, and you're dealing probably mostly with women who are in a situation, and they're generally older.
Oh, and sometimes they're women that were victimized as children, and it's impacting their adult lives. And so that's why many times that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with a primary victim. So that's why I say, it's never too late to begin the healing process.
And to know there are people you can talk to, just reach out and make the connection. Thank you, ladies, for coming in.
Thank you
Our
for having
guest
us.
has been Tammy Lampert. She's the director for SWICACC, let's see if I can get this, Southwest Indiana Child Advocacy Coalition Center.
Center Coalition.
Okay.
So close.
So
So
close.
close.
SWICACC. And we also want to thank Paula Rasche. She is the executive director for Crisis Connection. Thank you for watching WJTS. We are local people watching local people.